cái giao dịch mà khi mà ký hợp đồng cho vay xong rồi bán luôn cái hợp đồng cho vay đấy cho ngân hàng khác ấy. Thì tôi vừa nói chuyện với cô xong thì cô có nói là thực ra cái thị trường đấy ở bên Mỹ nó xảy ra rất là nhiều, và nó sẽ xảy ra ở cái tình trạng là ví dụ như tôi là khách hàng, tôi vay mua nhà của ngân hàng Wells Fargo chẳng hạn, thì ngay lập tức cái thời điểm tôi đặt bút xuống ký cái hợp đồng vay với cả Wells Fargo thì Wells Fargo đã bán cái hợp đồng đấy của tôi sang cho một ngân hàng khác. Tức là nó sẽ không phải là cái giao dịch là bán các cái khoản nợ mà đã đến kỳ hạn phải trả hay là quá hạn trả, mà ngay lập tức khi tôi ký bút vào cái hợp đồng vay đấy là cái giao dịch giữa Wells Fargo và một banh khác nó đã xảy ra rồi, tức là cái hợp đồng này đã được bán cho cái bên kia rồi. Và khi mà bán như vậy thì tôi là người vay, tôi sẽ không biết được rằng tất cả những cái mối quan hệ ở đằng sau giữa Wells Fargo và cái banh A kia. Thì và khi mà tôi trả nợ tôi vẫn trả nợ Wells Fargo bình thường. Thì cô có nói là đấy là cái giao dịch mà nó xảy ra rất là phổ biến và thường xuyên ở các cái thị trường phát triển ấy. Thế nhưng mà ở thị trường của Việt Nam mình thì có vẻ là chắc là sắp tới thì bọn tôi sẽ ở bên IFC sẽ phối hợp cùng cô làm một cái hội thảo liên quan đến vốn hóa các khoản nợ trong ngành ngân hàng, thì cũng hy vọng anh các chị sẽ đón nhận. Professor Nguyễn, I just tell them about the case about the contract selling that we discussed earlier morning. So now và bây giờ thì chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu vào buổi sáng ngày hôm nay ạ. Thì cái buổi sáng ngày hôm nay như hôm qua tôi đã nói là sẽ vẫn là bài trình bày của giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn. Thì giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn hôm nay thì sẽ trình bày về các cái loại hợp đồng mà nó phức tạp hơn rất nhiều so với ba hợp đồng ngày hôm qua mà giáo sư đã đưa ra lấy làm ví dụ. Trong một buổi sáng ngày hôm nay thì chúng ta sẽ dành thời gian cho giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn chia sẻ kinh nghiệm và cái thực tiễn soạn thảo hợp đồng, và đối với cả những cái mẫu hợp đồng đặc biệt là khó. Cái phần cuối giờ sáng ấy, thì chúng tôi sẽ dành nhiều để cho phần thảo luận, hỏi và đáp để các quý vị có thể đưa ra các câu hỏi của mình. Xin mời giáo sư Xuân Thảo ạ.
Oh, thank you. Well, hello, how are you? Good. Let me share with you a little bit about my background. And so I know that didn't have a chance to talk to you and answer questions from your, answer any of your questions. So I have been a law professor for 23 years. 23 years. I'm pretty old. So sorry, I'm old. But before I became a law professor, I was a lawyer in New York City. And so I work in New York City as a lawyer at a very well-known law firm, a very large law firm. And so when I was a lawyer, I did a lot of work relating to financing. And that's how I know. Once upon a time in the United States, we have about 30,000 banks in the US. But nowadays we only have less than 6,000 banks. From 30,000, we now have only 6,000 banks. So why that happened? Where are the banks? From 30,000 banks, now we have only 6,000 banks. That's a major decrease, right? From 30,000 banks to only 6,000 banks for the whole country. And America is big. And so what happened? And how is that relevant to Vietnam? And so what happened is that banks, when a country expand, the bank themselves consolidate. So the big banks purchase the smaller banks. And so therefore bank consolidate. And also that banks also, they use the concept of branches. And so you see banks in Hanoi and has branches in Ho Chi Minh City, or banks in Ho Chi Minh City have branches in Cần Thơ province. Well, the concept of branches, where did it come from? It came from America. So when you have branches in your country, when your bank have branches, branch offices, that idea didn't come from Japan or Germany. The branch ideas came from the United States. All right. And that branch ideas actually It came from bank. There's a bank, you know, there's one particular bank that fought for the ideas of branching. And so then from the United States, branch ideas, then expanded to Germany, to European countries, and to Japan, and of course, then later on to Vietnam and other developing nations here. But then the question then, why we have only 6,000 banks, for example, okay? And the prediction that the numbers will go even lower. And how's that relevant to what I'm talking about? And so the internet, the arrival of new technology is a major threat to bank existence. And we predict there will be fewer banks in the United States. Because why? Because there will be fintech companies. There are fintech companies. The young population, people in their 20s, they don't want to open bank accounts. They don't need to open bank accounts. They can open accounts with fintechs. They can obtain loans from online lending. They don't need banks anymore. And so the young generation in the United States, they don't want to see banks. So that's why banks dying. And what does it have to do with you in this room? What it means that you have to innovate. You, each one of you in this room here, you work for your banks. Your banks need to innovate. Because you not innovate, if you don't innovate, you're going to face the same kind of demise and same kind of threat. Technology is not going to wait for you. Young people, they see that, oh, a fintech company provided me with payment system. I need to open an account. And then online lending. Online lending in the United States right now, you know, a young business can go online in 5 minutes, can get a loan of 100,000 USD in 5 minutes. 100,000 USD, that's a nice amount of loan for a small business. 5 minutes. If they go to a bank, it takes too long. Bank asking for too many documents. They can go through an online lending and they can get a loan, a business loan in 5 minutes. In China right now, if a young business owns a trademark, a patent, they can get a loan in 6. If they own a trademark, they can get a loan against a trademark in 3 days. How many banks in Vietnam dare to make a loan to a small business and using the trademark as collateral and make that loan in 3 days? And then if the young companies, a young man, young woman has an invention and they have a patent, they have a new app, Chinese bank will make a loan for that company using the app, the invention as the collateral and make that loans, and it can be done in China, loan like that from A to Z in 6 days. How many banks in Vietnam dare to make loans to a young company that only have an invention? If you don't innovate and think of new products, okay, you'll be left behind. And your industry will be left behind. Just like I have seen banks in the United States, many of them disappear in the United States because they don't innovate. From 30,000 banks, we only have 6,000 banks in America. They all disappear. You don't innovate, you die. And that's that. You don't come up with new products, you die. And in this era, you die even quicker because of technologies. Okay? And so in America right now, most young people, in fact, you can look at 99% of young people in America. Nobody has a bank account, but they have fintech accounts. They have accounts with fintech companies. They don't care about banks. They think banks are dinosaurs. We call them dinosaur. You know dinosaur, right? Those old dinosaurs. T-Rex, you know, all those. So that's why my hope with the presentation today, okay, for you to engage in not only we asking questions relating to credit agreements, we learn to see, you know, how a particular bank survives so well. And one bank that I'm going to share with you, and we're going to look at the credit agreement, is this bank by the name of Silicon Valley Bank. That's in your material, Silicon Valley Bank. This particular bank, Silicon Valley Bank, it was founded in 1983. So it's a young bank because United States much older, okay? The fact that there was three men together, there were 3 men, and 3 of them was in their 40s, and 3 of them decided that in 1983 to found a new bank. And this is an inspiring story. Let's just listen with me let's listen for a second here. Imagine in 1983, 3 people in Vietnam decided to come together and create a new bank. So here in America, 3 people came together to create a new bank. They didn't have the money. And what they did, they went around in Silicon Valley. In 1983, there was no Silicon Valley yet. Now there you hear Silicon Valley. You know, you heard that's where Google's, where Uber's, you know, where Apple was created, right? Now you hear about that. But back in 1983, it was just empty land with fruit trees. And so these three men got together and found a bank. And they didn't have money. So they went around. They went around and asking money from 100 investors. And the 100 investors, each one of them invested $10,000 to the creation of a new bank. And this new bank, Silicon Valley Bank, started in 1983. It was the only bank in the United States of America during the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. It was the only bank during the recession that did not suffer any losses at all. It was the only bank. And that's Silicon Valley Bank, founded in 1983. Total assets, total money they had was $5 million only. They get $5 million from investors. Nowadays, if you Google Silicon Valley Bank, it has become 13th largest bank in America. So it went from $5 million, 1983 founded, and then it goes from 1983 to 2022, it became the 13th largest bank in the United States of America. That's an incredible story. And it's gone through up and down, up and down, up and down. But it was able to survive and thrive so well when most banks slowly disappearing in the United States. So that's why I decided that in your material, I selected the contract from one of the best banks in the United States to show to you, Silicon Valley Bank. So in your material, that's what we're going to go over. We're going to look at their credit agreements, how they drafted. And so you are looking at an example, one of the top innovative bank in America itself. So with that, we're going to take a look. Okay, so let's have the draft up, please. Okay, right. Silicon Valley Bank. That's what we have, Silicon Valley Bank. All right. So the first one. So now it's a loan and security agreement. So loan and security agreements, then everyone know that it will be a loan agreement and security agreement together, combined. It's a combined document now. Unlike the other deals, you have separate loans agreements, you have separate security agreements. This particular documents combined. Remember, I told you yesterday, depending on the deals, you know, some deals you need to have separate security agreements, but some deals you don't have to. It's okay to combine them together. All right. All right. Bless you. Oh, I xin thầy. All right. So first one, loan and security agreements. Do you like it that they say loan and security agreement like that for the title? Do you like that? Let's hear from you. What's your reaction when you see say loan and security agreement, the title? Do you like to have a title? Everybody's sneezing. It must be cold. So let me hear from you. So would you share with us, do you like that the title say loan and security agreement? What's your reaction? Do you want to have agreement that have a title? While I'm waiting for you to say something, you want to say something? Go ahead. Can I have the microphone, please? This morning we'll be talking as well. I'm going to ask you.
Theo em thì nó bình thường thôi, tức là đủ cái tên hợp đồng, tên gọi như thế nào nó không quan trọng là nó đủ nội dung và ý nghĩa của cái hợp đồng.
And why in this case that the lawyers, why in this case the lawyers put loan and security agreement instead of not putting any title at all? Do you prefer to put the title, or we should not have title?
Tên một cái hợp đồng thì đương nhiên là phải cần có tên rồi, nhưng mà tùy theo cái đơn vị, cái tổ chức. Ví dụ như đây là cái ngân hàng này thì cái quy ước của cái ngân hàng người ta muốn đưa ra cái tên đó để thống nhất trong cái tổ chức của đó.
Tùy. So international best practices, this is very common that we have title for the contract. Okay, so it's very, very common. It's not because of one bank. All banks in the United States and banks outside the United States practice this way. That have title. Okay, so the title has a good role to play. It's not legally binding, but it have a good role to play. Why it is good to have the title? Why international best practices have the title of loan and security agreement? Somebody like to share his or her view? Go ahead, please. Yes, right here.
From my point of view, the document, the loan and the security agreement should have a title. It's easy to reference throughout the documentation, as well as it's easy to remember between the parties.
Right, thank you. Yeah, and so to have its titled loan security agreement, then everybody in this room know that it's a combined credit agreement and the security agreement. It's a combined document here. Then we all know them. It's help the opposing counsel to know them. The judges, it's help the judge to know them. It's help everybody to know that we are looking at a combined document here that combine credit agreement and security agreement together. So we don't have to search, where's the credit agreement? Where's the security agreement? It's combined. And that's why the title has a wonderful role to play. That's why international best practices, we have title for these contracts this way. All right. So let's look at the first paragraph together. First paragraph, typically there's no numbering system at all, right? And so the first paragraph is almost like the preamble. The preamble said, all right, so this loan and security agreement, and then to tell you that, the parenthetical agreements here, and it gives us the effective date. Date is June 6, 2016. So we have seen this yesterday 3 times, and now we see it again about effective date. Do you like effective date? Effective dates mean, you know, doesn't matter that the party signed it on the 17th, on the 20th, on the 30th. It doesn't matter. The effective day is the day that will control. That's when the agreement is effective against each other, against the parties here. It doesn't matter when the party signed it. You can take 3 days to sign it, and you can sign on June 20, June 24, who cares? But the effective date of contract is the June 6th. June 6th. So do you like effective date? What's your comments on effective date? What's your comment relating to drafting with effective date? What do you think about effective date? Can I have the mic here, please? Everybody's going to talk today. Go ahead, please.
Ý là nếu mà để cái ngày 6 tháng 6 năm 2016 đầu tiên luôn á, ngày hiệu lực của hợp đồng á, thì em thấy là nó đánh vào trong, nghĩa là thấy liền luôn cái ngày đó, và cảm thấy là clear, nó mọi thứ nó cũng được rõ ràng hơn, thay vì là sau khi mình đọc hết một cái hợp đồng và câu cuối cùng của mình ghi là ngày hợp đồng nó là hiệu lực kể từ ngày 6 tháng 6 năm 2016. Yeah.
Thank you. So that is the best practice internationally. We have the effective days is right up front. We don't depend on the signature on the day that they sign the contract. In Vietnam, is that the day you sign the contract is the effective day? Go ahead, please. There's a phone.
Vũ xin có một cái comment nhỏ về cái effective date này. Tuy là có ghi ngày vào ngay câu đầu, tuy nhiên đây chỉ là cái thuật ngữ viết tắt effective date, và nó không có nghĩa rằng đây là một ngày hiệu lực của hợp đồng. Nó cần phải thêm một điều khoản hoặc chỗ nào đó trong hợp đồng để nói là hợp đồng này có hiệu lực từ ngày nào.
Yes, it has in that.
Rồi.
It has in that.
Chứ nó không ám chỉ cái, nó chỉ là chi tiết tham khảo thôi, chứ nó không có ý nghĩa về mặt pháp lý để nói là
Well, effective day typically right here is typically defined as the days that the contract is effective. A good lawyer drafting effective day inside the contract will say that effective day is the day that the contract from enforceable between the two parties themselves. So good draftings will say that way, effective day. Otherwise, effective in the United States is effective is a legal understanding, but good lawyers will put in the contract say that effective days means that the contract itself will be effective on that day. Okay.
Nếu ý định như vậy thì luật sư có thể ghi luôn là hợp đồng này có hiệu lực kể từ ngày nào.
Okay.
Effective date from.
Okay. Then let's go. You want that one here, and so then you can go to, first of all, language, English language. English language, typically when we say effective date, it means the day that the contract is self effective. It's just the language, okay? And so we typically do not need to say that that is the day the contract will be effective. We don't have to say out loud that way. We don't have to say that out in the contract, because in the United States, we know when something say effective day, that means that is day enforceable for the two parties. But the gentleman here say that he would like to make it double sure. Maybe for the Vietnam context that will work, but for the United States, you don't have to. But if you want to be careful, you can put it in the definition. But the United States, this way here, effective days already means the days that the contract effective between the two parties. Okay. Now,
xin lỗi, có thể hỏi
Sure.
một câu hỏi được không?
sure, sure.
Nãy cũng có nói là ghi ngày hiệu lực ngay từ đầu á, thì nó hiệu ích là nó không cần quan tâm vào cái việc khi nào các bên ký.
Right. What's the question?
Vũ xin có câu hỏi là vậy trong trường hợp là thật sự là cái ngày hiệu lực ghi trên đó là ngày backdate. Ví dụ ký ngày hôm nay là ngày mùng 2, nhưng mà lại ghi ngày hiệu lực là trước đó là ví dụ từ tháng 7.
Sure.
Thì
Sure.
nó có vấn đề gì về mặt
Sure. Okay. So we have many cases, many litigations before, you know, in the United States, and we, the lawyers, we learned that, all right, we learned from prior litigation, people fight over days too much. All right. You have one party sign on one day, and back then there was no internet. You have to send it by mail, and the mail will take 3 days, you know, to get to somebody, and then somebody will sign, and then there's 2 different days, you know, because one person signed, and then we put in the mail takes 3 days in the US. Because we go from Washington, we go to New York, it takes 3 days. And so therefore the days will be different. And so that's why we in the United States, we say, no, that's good. We don't know which day is the so-called the effective day of the contract. That's why litigation then, litigation, when we have too many litigation relating to that, lawyer, we say, no, here's a better way. Here's a better way. So everybody in America, we say that here's a better way to do. If we select, both sides select the effective date, it does not matter when the contract is signed. Because typically what it means is that the contract signed subsequently. Okay, you don't have the contract signed, you know, too many months in advance for the effective dates come so later, but typically it's contemporaneous. It's usually a couple days later. A couple of days later itself to do that one. And so contract is about the intent of the parties. If the party intend whatever the effective date, that's the effective date. So the court will say that's what you decided the effective date. Doesn't matter when you sign it because you already agreed the effective date itself. Okay. So that's the international framework relating to, doesn't matter when the signature is executed, but the intent of the party agree on one particular day for the effective date. The most important things about contract is to avoid litigation, to avoid dispute. And so that's why we have effective date. We don't rely on the date of the signature signing, because the day signature signing is create disputes, versus effective date eliminates dispute. So that's why we have effective date. Okay. All right. All right. And so now let's go to the continues with the parties themselves. The parties in this case here. Can you identify who the parties are? Who are the parties in this case? How many banks involved in this case? And how many borrowers, how many banks? You want to share with us how many banks involved in this case here? Go ahead, give it to her, the microphone.
Em thấy ở đây là ba bên, 3 ngân hàng.
Go ahead.
2 banh và một công ty là bên vay.
Do we have 3 sides? Do we have 3 sides or we have 2 sides only? So we have Silicon Valley Bank is the agent, and then we have one agent, and then B, we have SVB and we have Ali. And so Ali is from Utah. And so they are lenders or lenders. So they're the plural. So how many banks do we have here? 2 banks. So have you yourself draft an agreement, you and another bank is the other lenders? How many of you in this room have drafted an agreement when you and another banks are the lenders? And then somebody else and one party is the borrower. Have you drafted that? You nod your head? Okay, may I have the microphone here, please? You nodded it. Share with us.
Dạ, em chào cô.
Yes.
Bên
Hello.
ngân hàng em thì cũng đã từng soạn hợp đồng đối với dạng đồng tài trợ.
So on the same contract? On the same contract?
Yes. Dạ,
Okay,
đúng rồi. Dạ.
identical to this?
Dạ, thực ra thì em chưa đọc hết cái hợp đồng này. nhưng mà nôm na rằng là sẽ có 2 tổ chức tín dụng cùng tài trợ cho một công ty. Dạ vâng.
And when you draft one contract, or how many contracts did you draft for that context? In that context?
Dạ, liên quan tới hợp đồng tín dụng thì là soạn một hợp đồng ạ.
Okay. And so together with the 2 banks on it, 2 banks and one borrower on one contract.
Dạ đúng rồi, và sẽ phân định cái trách nhiệm giữa các ngân hàng với nhau. Tức là sẽ là 2 ngân hàng thống nhất thỏa thuận là một cái ngân hàng làm đầu mối và sẽ là đại diện bên cho vay để ký kết với lại bên vay.
Okay. All right. Let's compare it then. Thank you. So let's see that whether that your contract that you drafted will be similar to this one or not, or how different it is, right? Okay, let's do that. So here we have 2 different banks and we have the rep. So we have a rep, an agent, and 2 banks, and then we have the borrowers in this case here. And then as you saw that before, that I mentioned yesterday, the borrower, we don't even care and put the address up there. We just say that the borrower is in Washington state. We don't even put down where this company is located, the borrower. The borrowers, we don't care. Company, Alvalara. Alvalara, where's Alvalara? I don't know. It's in Washington somewhere. What's the address? I don't know. And then we say, and I don't care. Right? Because Alvalara might move to new locations. So why put the address there? We don't put the address of Alvalara there. The bank, SVB, we don't put the address up there because they might have different locations. Don't need to put up there. I mean, that sounds really strange. How come there's no address there at all? Well, and the reason is that banks move locations. This office might enter into an agreement, but it might shut down, it might move to different locations. So therefore, we're not going to put address right up front. Not going to do that. All right. And so we have this here. All right. And so now the parties agree. So there's no recitals here at all. Remember recitals? There's no recitals here. Do you want recitals? You saw recital yesterday in one of the agreements. But here, it's have no recitals. Remember, recitals like tell the story, the relationship. How did they begin? But in this situation here, the lawyer decided that the lawyers for this very famous bank said, oh, there's no need to have recitals in this particular case. Why we don't need to have recitals here at all? Well, they could very say that here, this is just the beginning. Let's go right into the agreements here. Recital is just so old methods. Who care? Let's just agree. So in Vietnam, do you have recitals? Some of you say yes and some of you say no. Which means both. Some say yes, some say no. You say no and you say yes. Okay. Okay. So you say yes, you say no. Both of you are right. Okay. So do you like to use recitals when you say yes? Go ahead. Do you like to use recitals? You say yes here. May I have the microphone? May I have the microphone for this lady, please, over here? Đấy.
Ở tại ngân hàng của em á, thì nếu mà một cái số giao dịch mà đơn giản á, thì có thể là bỏ qua cái phần mở đầu. Còn một số cái giao dịch mà khá là phức tạp, có thể là có nhiều bên tham gia hoặc là có dẫn đến một cái dự án, thì sẽ có cái phần mà người ta không có gọi là mở đầu mà là xét rằng là các bên là họ có một cái dự án như vậy ở cái địa chỉ gì, thì họ sẽ đưa ra để mà có một cái mở đầu về sơ lược về cái dự án đó. Và có thể là cái giao dịch này có thể là gắn với nhiều bên tham gia, ví dụ như là cho vay hợp vốn hay là cho vay tái tài trợ hay như thế nào thì sẽ có.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So this particular loan here is not a small loan. It's 25 million USD. So 25 million USD is what? You know, as what 800 some billion Vietnamese đồng, right? Because it's 25 million USD for this loan. It's not a small loan, but there is no recitals. There's no recitals here. And it looks like a complex agreement because it have two banks, agent, borrower. So 4 different groups. But yes, there's no recitals at all. And so the new trends of contract drafting is not having recitals. The new trends. But if you continue to use recital, you use recital. But the new trends, new lawyers at famous law firms in the United States and also from famous banks, they don't have recitals. That's the new trends. But of course, the majority of lawyers in the United States still use recital itself. And so sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not helpful. So it's up to anybody to use it or not using it. So this just to show to you this new trend. It's a complex deal with 4 different stakeholders here. You know, and the loan is 25 million US dollars. That's one of the term loan. And the revolving credit line is much bigger. So this is not a small loan. And yet it has no recitals in this particular context. So what I'm trying to say that don't be surprised that the international trends have no recitals. Okay, even it's in a complex transaction itself. All right, to do that. All right, and so let's look at the definition. Okay, let's look at number one. Number one here is that first of all, right in here is talk about GAAP. Why is put GAAP right in number one, first paragraph? It say that these terms, you know, according to the, you know, if terms are not defined by in this agreement, then it shall be construed by following GAAP, the general accounting accepted principles. Why they put gaps in here? If terms are not defined in this agreement, then you follow gaps. Do you follow gaps? You say that no banks in Vietnam follow gaps. All right. Any of your banks follow gaps, accounting practices? Or you say that, don't know. So don't follow gaps. So the attendees here share with us. The attendees up here already shared with us that in Vietnam, you don't follow general accounting accepted principles, but you follow some other accounting practices instead. And so here, when you deal with in many international banks, you see that, all right, defined terms, but terms are not defined as we follow gaps. So let's look at defined terms. And so defined terms, I remember that yesterday, Mr. Tring already talked about defined terms. So let's take a look at the defined terms themselves. So let's say that, you know, defined terms is in section 14. Now, section 14, you have to go all the way to almost the end, you get to section 14. So some contracts, the definition is right up front. Some of the credit agreement, the definition go at the end. And so in this particular case here, the lawyers of this famous bank decide that the definitions go all the way at the end. And so all the ways at the end. All the way to the end, section 14, when you see definitions. So it's almost rarely see a credit agreement without definitions. So this is very important to have defined terms. And with definitions, lawyers should never cut and paste from somebody else's definitions. You know, you have to be careful when you cut and paste from somebody else's definitions here. You make sure that the terms are defined the way you want them. Okay. So you can see the definitions on paragraph beginning section 14. Why did they put at the bottom? Why the lawyers put at the ends of the contract? Why they put at the end of the contracts? Why didn't they put at the beginning of the contracts? So you look at section 14, several pages, it's before the signature block. So at the end of this very important contract, just right before the signature block. Why did they put it at the end? Many credit agreements, they put it from the very beginning, definition from the very beginning. And this particular bank decided to put it at the end. Which one would you like? Put it at the beginning and put it at the end. Somebody else. Let's hear from here. What do you think? The beginning or the end? The definitions. Why some lawyers put in the front? Why some lawyers put in the back?
Theo em thì định nghĩa nên đưa lên đầu của hợp đồng để khi mà mọi người sẽ xem cái nội dung sau thì đã biết trước cái định nghĩa đấy nghĩa là gì để mình hiểu được cái nội dung ở bên dưới điều rõ hơn.
Right. Right. Why you put it at the end? That's good. Okay. Why somebody put it at the end? Why somebody put it at the end? Put it at the end. He's all right with it.
I think because the definition is not necessary, I mean, it's not important than other clauses in the contract, like the term or the loan. Then the definition, and beside the clause of definition is very long. It takes 2 or 3 pages. And if we put at the beginning, then we cannot or we don't have time to focus on the important terms. So that I think in this template, the lawyer he want to put at the end. So when we read the whole contract, then if we see any term that we don't know, then we may refer to clause 14, then we turn back to continue reading. So I think that the reason why they put at the end of the contract.
Well, thank you. Somebody disagree with that? Somebody disagree with what he said? I disagree. As lawyers, we should disagree with everything, right? The definitions are so important, so important. And many lawyers used to say that we put it right in the front because what's important we put up front, right? But in this case here, definitions are so important, but we put it in the back. But they are really important. Why they are so important? They are important because it's you and I deciding what the terms means. Not judges, not the president, Biden, no. Not the president of the country, no. Not the prime minister say what the term means, no. You and I have the power, the authority, decide what these terms means, not the court. This is a contract between the parties here. We decide what the terms mean, not the judges. If we say that I'm holding the glass, and if we say glass means a bottle, if the glass is defined as a bottle in this contract, the court cannot change it. If we say the chair has only 2 legs, not 4 legs. I say this chair here, we define chair means 2 legs. The court cannot change it because we agreed that chairs means 2 legs. And we define it. Nobody, even President of the United States, cannot change that. That's contract. So that's why definitions are so important here. In fact, many times parties fight over definitions. That's what they fight over. They fight over definitions here. Okay? But why is it at the end? Well, because you know, sometimes psychologically it's like, gee, that contract is so long, 100 pages. Let's just put all the defined term definition at the end of the contract. We will just go and focus on the other terms. And yes, it's true that when we see a capital, when we read the contract, when we see a capital letter, we need to stop and we look at the definition. Okay, and so therefore, definitions are important, but because psychologically we don't want to say that, oh, this contract is 100 pages. We say, well, this contract is so. It's only, we will tell each other, actually the contract itself is only about 26 and 27 pages. The rest of them just definitions, right? So then we tell each other, oh, it's not that a long contract. The contract is not that long. It's just 26 pages here, and the rest of them definition and exhibits. But the definitions are so important, right? So put it in front of the contract, earlier or put in the back, it doesn't matter. And there is a new trend. The new trends that put in the definition to the back of the contract. And you are correct. Then we focus on the other terms. But be careful. Just because we put in the back, when you read the beginning of the contract, every time when we see a capital letter, you need to go and look at the definitions. Because what in your mind, when you look at a capital letters, you know, don't assume. So let's say here, don't assume that when we see the words here, let's say that pro rata share, okay? Don't assume that pro rata share in this contract means the same pro rata share in the other contracts. Essentially, that don't take your experience in other contexts and apply to this context, because the definition might not be identical, because defined by the parties in this context itself. So the lesson learned drafting as lawyers, that don't make the assumption based on your experience from the last contract and bring that into this context. Don't make assumptions about certain defined terms in other contexts and think that they are the same in this context. So be careful in that regard. Okay, careful in that. So definitions. And also why international best practices always have definitions? Sure, go ahead.
Cô, em có một câu hỏi là theo như cô giải thích từ nãy giờ thì em được biết rằng là cái phần định nghĩa nó rất là quan trọng và nó là một trong những cái cách thức để mà các bên tránh cái việc tranh chấp trong những cái cách hiểu. Tuy nhiên nếu như trong trường hợp cái định nghĩa của hợp đồng mà nó trái với quy định của pháp luật thì nếu nó tranh chấp ra tại tòa án thì tòa án có chấp nhận cái cách định nghĩa này hay không?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Good lawyers, we will never do that. We will be committing malpractice and client will not hire us. If our definition contrary to the existing law, we will lose our job and the client will report you to the bar association and you will be in front of the disciplinary committee. In the US, it's very tough. Client will report you. If you advise them contrary to law, you will be reported to the front of the disciplinary committee. And they will report you to the court and you will lose your license to practice. Nothing is scarier than losing your license to practice in America. So nobody dare to do at all what you just said. So I never heard of it in my life. Never. All right. And everybody is afraid losing license. But thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. All right. The definition, however, her question raised something interesting. The definition can be contrary to normal understanding, but it cannot violate law. So like I say, if we define the chair, 2 legs, and we do have a chair 2 legs, then that's okay, right? But it's factually correct when we define it. It's not legally wrong to say that the chair has 2 legs. When we indeed have a chair of 2 legs. So factually correct is fine. It cannot be legally wrong, right? And so that's fine. That's fine with that. Okay. So but very, very good question relating to that. Okay. So clearly definitions also allow the contract to be very clean. The US and international best practices use definitions a lot, because by use definitions, then instead of have a contract very long, the main body contracts very long and repetitive, we use definition that everything is much shorter, cleaner, concise. And so that's why definition is so, there's so many definitions. Every term is a defined term. And by having lots of defined terms, then the contract itself is much shorter. Okay. So I do hope that you are so used to having defined terms. So definitions, have those kind of definitions in all contracts would be good. In fact, that not only in credit agreements and security agreements, you see definitions, practically licensing agreements, you see definitions. Distribution agreements, you see definitions. Factoring agreements, definitions. You will see any kind of franchise agreements like Starbucks, or you see McDonald's franchise, every agreement, international agreements, you see definitions. All right. And also law. Let's say that civil law, or you say criminal law or secure transaction law, any law, in any law, you will see a whole section of definitions. One thing that I know, Vietnam's law, you don't use definitions a whole lot, but definitions, it's very, very, very common. So I do hope that lawyers, all of you in this room, use definition and then share with each other how you have defined terms, you know, and how you use them. So definitions here. So definitions important, negotiate by the parties, and the courts cannot change it, and it cannot be in violation of law. It has to be consistent with the facts, and it's helped the contract to be much more concise as well. So definition use. So for an example, okay. For an example, let's take a look at the examples itself. Okay. If you look at section 14, and then it is organized in alphabetical order from A, B, C, D, E. So it's in alphabetical order. So lawyers expect that everybody draft definition and organize this way, have to be in alphabetical order. Okay. Now, look at the terms account and account debtor for a second. So write there account and account debtor. So account. So it's interesting that the lawyers in this case here say that account, well, we don't want to define account differently. We say that accounts here defined in the code. Accounts defined in the code. And they say that accounts may also hereafter includes without limitation or accounts receivable and other sums owing to borrower. So this definition of accounts is much broader than just account receivable. It means all of the monies out there, because say other sums owing to borrower, not just account receivables. Any money out there that owing to the borrower will be deemed as accounts. Okay. So what do you think about this definition of accounts? So when you draft contracts, what do you mean by you use the word account? The lawyers here say account mean this way, not only defined by law, but also say that all account receivable and other sum owing to borrower. What do you think about that? I see the Vietnamese language right there. I do know how to read some Vietnamese, I don't understand them all. Okay. So I see the Vietnamese say what? Các khoản phải thu and khoản khác nợ. What does it say? Nợ bên vay. Okay. Do you define the same way in Vietnam? Accounts that way? No. No, you don't define that way. Why banks internationally define that way? Why international best practices, they define accounts to be this way? Anybody with comments? Why international best practices define account this way? It's not the way that you currently define them in Vietnam. Debt, So for Vietnam, it's debt.
Many. Yeah. For example, to render a certain an account in situation is like that, not account in the bank.
Okay. So your answer is that Vietnam the same way. So Vietnam, you draft the same way, you draft contract accounts the same way. I see. Okay, so when we use the term in the international context, when you use the term accounts, they mean account receivable and any money out there that owed to the borrower. We use it very, very broadly. Okay? And unless we say bank accounts be separate. But when we use the term accounts, we use it such a broad way this way. Why is that? Because the banks, they want a secured interest on everything. The bank's lawyer draft these agreements, they want the secured interest in everything. In everything means what? The account receivable. And if there's anyone's out there owing money to the borrower, that's kinds of money. We don't know how much, and we don't know when will that happen ever at all. We don't care. We draft this contract. We want the security interest reach to all of those. Some amount of money, whenever, we don't know, we don't care. But as long as owing to the borrower, then we want the security interest on all of them. So that's why they define account in this broad way. And so which means when you read this contract and when you're in international context, you don't make the assumption the way that you think about account in Vietnam's context to apply in this case. That's why you have to read the definition. And the definition say that all of it, all account receivable and whatever money is out there that owing to the borrower. Okay. So you can see this is how they draft up. Okay, so that's one example relating to account. Now, let's look at the account. So let's look at account data. All right. So when they say that account data, so the term account data, they say that, oh, you have to look at the law itself. So therefore the lawyer said that, okay, whatever is in the law, we say that it's going to be the definition here. And this is another way that the lawyers don't want to go and cut and paste from the law and put it in here. They say, well, whatever the laws with respect to the code relating to account data. And so account data has very specific meaning, okay? Very, very specific meaning. So therefore, they use it this way. Now, let's look at advance rate. Let's look at advance rate for a second. Advance rate. Advance rate. Advance and advance rates, advance and advance rates is so. Advance and advance rate. So international best practices use the term advance a lot. So advance, you know, typically in revolving loan. So we know that it's a revolving loans here. And so they make advancements, certain amount of money. And so by having the definition of advance and advance rate, we know exactly that we are looking at a revolving credit line, not only just a term loan, but there will be periodic advance, certain amounts of money, advance rate. Okay, term loan, remember term loan, I talked to you yesterday, term loans means that the lender will transfer the entire amount itself. And then here's the advance rate. So do you do advance rates a lot here? Do advance rates. Okay, so many of you nodding your head. So you've done advance rates. And so you determine advance and advance rates. So you can see the definition relating to advance and advance rate here. All right. And then even the advance rate, and then you ask yourself, like, oh, availability amount. Let's look at that. If they have advance, it's the amount of the money, right? Of the revolving line, and yet they have availability amount. What availability amount? So availability amount. And it defines what availability amount is. So you can see that the definition is so detailed. I'm trying to explain to you, it's so detailed. Advance is a different amount, but availability amount is different from advance rate, from advance itself. So it's the lessors of the revolving line, whatever the amount of money, you know, that they agree to, and then the amount available under the borrowing base minus the outstanding principal. So they have the availability amount. So don't worry, we're not going to go over every terms here. But what I'm trying to show to you that the lawyers for this big and well-known bank, that they have detailed definition, very, very detailed. Why is that? Because they don't want anybody to have argument later on. Lawyers in the United States, we don't like litigation. People think that the United States love litigation. No, we don't. We don't like litigation. Good businesses don't want to be in court. Good lawyers don't want to be in court. Good lawyers help their client ahead of time to prevent getting into disputes. So that's why detailed definition, availability amount, different than advance, different than advance rate. So detailed definition like this. Because why? Because judges don't know as much as lawyers. If you bring this case to the judge, how much time the judge will spend on this case? Judges are so busy. And they are, I'm sorry, not all judges are smart. Not all judges are smart. Lawyers have to teach the judges. And judges not going to spend a lot of time on your case. So therefore, you don't want your case in front of the judge. You want to have detailed definitions. So no judges will decide this case because you already decide for yourself what the terms are. Okay. So that's why it's so detailed here. Okay, now let's give you a detailed definition here for a second. Okay. So now let's look at here. For an example, the terms, we will go to this particular term, credit extension on page 31, credit extension. And then you ask yourself, like, what? Credit extension, we already talked about advance. They said that credit extension is any advance, over advance, or term loan to advance, or any extensions of credit by the agent, by agents, or by lender for borrowers' benefit under this agreement. Wow, just a second. This is really scary. Credit extension says any advance, but advance is a defined term because capital A. Over advance is a defined term. In order to understand credit extension, you have to go to advance to understand what it means. You have to go to over advance. What does it mean? You have to go to term loan advance. What does it mean? You have to go to agents. What does it mean? You have to go to lender. What it means? And then you have to look to agreement. So there are so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 defined terms in the credit extension. You see what I'm talking about? There are 7 defined terms in the definition of credit extension. In order to understand credit extension, you have to go to 7 different definitions in order to understand the full meaning of credit extension itself. This is about drafting at a very sophisticated level. Right? Right. Did you see that? Did you see that the credit extension, like the term credit extension, you have to go through advanced, over advanced term loans agreements, agent, lender, borrower agreement, 7 different defined terms in order to understand the term credit extension. So this is drafting skills. That one definition, you have to go through 7 other definitions because they're all related. And so why do they have credit extension? Let's look at the definition carefully. They already define advance. So we saw advance, what does it mean? And then over advance. So in situation that the bank's over advance certain amounts, right? Let's say an advance, it could very well be, let's say $1 million. Let's say that over advancements, let's say over that amount somehow, let's say that it's going to be 1.5. Term loan advance. Maybe the term loans itself, we look at the term loan, $25 million, and then something that over beyond the term loans advancement. And then they say, or, the word or right there, or any other extension of credit. And so the lawyers in this case here say that, what happened that if my client, the bank, in some situation that they provide not the advance, not just the over advance, not just the term loans agreement, but any other extension of credits by the agent, not just by the, or any lender. It could be by Silicon Valley Bank, by Ali Bank, by SVB, for the borrower's benefits. So whatever credits that the bank provided for the borrower's benefits will be credit extension. So defined that way. So the lawyer anticipate situation that it's not just a regular advancement. It's not just a regular over advancement. It's not just a term loan advancement, but some other situation that the lawyer cannot think about today and have no idea what will be in the future at all. But it will be you know, whatever that's credit that the client, the agent, the bank, the lender provided to the borrowers for the borrower's benefits, that will be deemed as a credit extension. So that's why the lawyer said, we're gonna make it this way, and then put it in the definition itself. So you can see then it's about anticipating the kind of credit lines, you know, credits that beyond what defined, okay? Because a lot of times that, remember I talked to you that banking is about relationship. And the relationship is sometimes it might expand, contract. So therefore the lawyer said, what if my client going to extend some other credit that we don't know what it is right now? But I better put it in the definition itself. I'm going to call it credit extension. But not advance. It's not an advance, not an over advance, not a term loan advance, but whatever it is. That's why the word or any other credit extension for the benefits of the borrower. Okay. So that is another drafting skills that the lawyers in this case did. All right. So let's take a look. All right. So let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back. Let's flip back to the contract. Let's go back to page 1. Let's flip back to page 1. Page 1. Flip back to page 1. So far we at number 1. We're at number 1 because we took a detour, because number 1 tells us to go and look at section 14. That's why we went to section 14. Right. We are just only at number 1, the first paragraph. Right. So now we go and take a look at number 2. Let's see number 2, how the lawyer drafts with respect to number 2. Oh, this is interesting. 2.1, promise to pay. Promise to pay. So promise to pay. And let's take a look at why lawyers internationally use this concept, promise to pay. Borrower hereby unconditionally promises to pay to agent for the benefit of each of the lender in accordance with respect to pro rata share, the defined term, and the outstanding principal amount of all credit extensions. Oh, we saw credit extensions. Credit extensions, remember the definition, credit extension? It means advance, it means over advance, and term loans advance, and all the credit extension. So credit extension here is a defined term because capital C, capital E. And accrue and unpaid interest upon, you know, due under this agreement. And so promise to pay to the lender, the credit extension and the credit. So credit extension cover advances and cover term loans advance. Remember that yesterday when I told you the concept of promissory or promissory note. Yesterday we talked about promissory notes, and then the fact that companies buy and sell promissory notes. And here in this loans agreements here, what we see in 2.1 say promise to pay, and then the borrower say that promise unconditionally to pay. So which means using that phrase promise to pay, so unconditionally promise to pay, that Silicon Valley Bank can sell this loans agreement to another bank, to another lender. And this is a very good loans agreement. This particular borrower make payments on time. This is good loan. This is not the kind of overdue loan. It's not the kind of bad performance loan. No, this is a really good loan. But the bank will sell this loan to somebody else. And how can the bank sell this loan? Because in terms of legal framework, the promise to pay, that phrase right there, the legal phrase, promise to pay unconditionally, the credit extension and the interest indicated in this note. Okay, this is effective. That particular phrase is effective for the lender to then sell it to the buyer, and buyer look at it and say, oh, this looks good. There's a promise to pay. That means if I purchase this loans agreements here, I can then go to Alvarez and then demand for the payment because they promise to pay. All right. This is the practice been around for a long time. Back in, remember I told you back in Shakespearean time, a long time, the concept of promise to pay back on a piece, on a small note. Many of you, those of you who attended my workshop before, you heard the story that I told you. Remember Shakespeare, the Merchant of Venice? The Merchant of Venice, you know, if you sell me 1 pound of flesh, you know, it will be 1 pound of note. Remember that? You know Merchant of Venice? Or go home and watch it on Netflix. Right? And so 1 pound of flesh, here's a 1 pound of note. Right? And so what do they mean by that, Merchant of Venice? Oh, that's a promissory note. I can take this note and I can sell the note to somebody else. And then I can come to you. And then I say that if I'm the purchaser of the note, and I go to the maker, the note say pay up, because say right there, you promise to pay. So the legal concept of promise to pay, that phrase, every bank in the United States and worldwide will put it in the loans agreement, because that loans agreement will be sold on the market out there. Without, if you don't put the phrase promise to pay clearly, then nobody will buy that loan agreement. Because why? Because if I buy a loans agreement that's not clearly say somebody promised to pay, I cannot take that loans agreement to make the person pay. So it have a historical background related to this concept of promise to pay, clearly say so. So that's why you see it right at the beginning. Okay, promise to pay in this context itself. All right. Now, promise to pay, typically that you have to clearly indicate what exactly that promise to pay. So that makes sense in order for a purchaser to buy this loans agreement. And so in this context here, 2.1 say, oh, promise to pay the credit extension. And we saw the definition, credit extension cover advances. So now we look at 2.11 relating to advances. Here we go, advances. So therefore, it's explained in 2.11 relating to advances and 2.12 relating to term loan. Advances, term loans together, they are credit extension. That's what we saw in the definition. Everybody with me? Credit extensions means advances, term loan, and that's why in 2.1 it says credit extension, and 2.11 say advances because revolving credit lines, and 2.12 is a term loans. Term loans, as I mentioned to you yesterday, look at this term loans here. Term loan. The lenders together, severally and not jointly, shall make one term loan in the amount of $25 million. So term loans is the release is one time, and they identify $25 million here. All right. Advances is a different amount. That's why 2.11 is different amounts than 2.12. 2.12 is just a strict term loan. And term loans in this case here have to be repaid in 2 years. Actually 24 equal monthly. So have to repay in 2 years. So term loan for 2 years. So $25 million plus advances under 2.11 together, that's the credit extension. So if I am a buyer of this loan, if I am Citibank, I want to buy these loans agreements from Silicon Valley Bank. I will look at, oh, how much is the term loan? 25 million. I want to find out how much the advances, and then together become credit extension. And that will be in the promise to pay. And then I will calculate and how much I want to pay Silicon Valley Bank if I want to buy this loans agreement from Silicon Valley Bank. Because I might be Citibank, I might be JP Morgan, I might be Goldman's, I'm much bigger, and I want to buy these loans. Okay. So that's what you have here with respect to it. Okay.
Dạ vâng ạ, chúng ta ổn định rồi thì tôi cũng xin nhường lại diễn đàn cho giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn, và giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn sẽ tiếp tục cái phần trình bày của mình liên quan đến các cái mẫu hợp đồng ạ. Xin mời giáo sư ạ.
So what's your name? What's your name? Mai. Mai asked me a very good question during the break, and my question relating to if you are lawyers, how can you draft the definition, and do you know how can you know like when do you need to have a definition in Vietnam context itself, right? And so I share with mine is that when I draft a contract, when I'm actually drafting a contract, and if I find myself repeating something twice and have to explain something twice, then I say that, aha, I should have a definition now. Because I'm repeating something again in the contract, I should have a definition for it. And so what I suggest that you at each of your bank, take your existing contract that you have, how many pages existing contracts you have, and you go over those contracts and you see that how many times that there's a concept or there's a term or something that you repeat it twice, then you say that you're going to have a definition. All right, and then have a definition term, and then you create a list of definitions itself. So by doing that, so that's how we lawyers do. We lawyers in the United States, we do that because you cannot really begin with drafting definition. It doesn't work that way. You begin with you actually drafting the contract, and you caught yourself like, oops, this is no good. I'm repeating myself, repeat and explain it twice. Have a definition. So do it. All right, now we're going to go into part 4. So section 4 is important now. It's creation of the security interest. So we know that this loans agreements, this credit agreement is big. It's $25 million term loans. It's have revolving credits, and I'll have advances. So it's really big loans here. And so of course that the lawyers in this case decided to combine and have security interest in that. And security interest is in section 4. Section 1 relating to, we already looked at the loans amount, the credits, the interest rate, all of that. We go to section 4 on creation of security interest. And so the creation of the security interest here, and so you can see that borrower hereby grants agent. So in this situation, we have the agent. It's a complex situation, right? And for the benefits of the lenders, because we have 2 lenders here, so 2 lenders, and so therefore the concept of ratable benefits, which means that whatever the percentage of the lenders with respect to the loans, and so if 60-40, then it will be, the benefits will be 60-40, ratable benefits, right? Because we have more than 1 lenders in this case. To secure the payments and the performance in full. So you can see that the security interest and security interest in the collateral. So this is how they deal with multiple lenders, and you have an agent, and you have a security interest for the benefits of the multiple lenders here. And in the collateral, and the term collateral is defined, so capital C. So capital C, and in order to understand collateral, we have to go now and we need to look at what the collaterals here means, right? And so before we go and look at collateral, let's look at the remainders of this for a second. And so we have in 4.1 the grant of security interest in the collateral, and the collateral say that wherever located, we don't care where it's located. It can be located in Vietnam, in Japan, wherever located. That's the phrase. We don't need to identify located in the United States somewhere. Say wherever located, that's with the collateral. And then it say that whether now owned or hereafter acquired. So this is after acquired collaterals, you know. And so the Vietnamese words is what hình thành trong tương lai. That's what I heard, right? And so here we go, hereafter acquired, or arising, hereafter acquired or arising, and also all proceeds and products thereof. You know? So not only that the collateral, we will look at what collaterals means, but it also say that wherever located, whichever country, we don't care, but that should be collateral. So wherever located, and either owned today by the borrower or owned 10 years from now or whenever, you know, after arising, after acquired. So future, right? And then also, if you the borrower, if you sell them, you get proceeds, that means money, proceeds, or if you exchange the collateral and you get new type of property, proceeds mean whatever you exchange, the new property. The collaterals here reach the new property. So if the collateral originally is a headphone and the headphone been exchanged to the chair, and the chair is the proceeds of the chair is the proceeds of the headphone. Proceeds does not mean just money alone in the international context. Proceeds is whatever exchange. So dispose exchange. So the original collateral is headphone, but if you can sell the headphone, you get money, that's proceed. But you can also exchange the headphone for the chair, and so therefore the chair is the proceeds of the headphone. And so that's why I say proceeds thereof, proceeds and product. So the lawyer was so careful, say, oh yeah, proceed and product thereof, product thereof. So the original collateral change form into products. Oh, the security interest will reach that as well. So that's what we have in this particular case. So you can see it's really clear. You can see it's really clear that the collaterals here is a capital C. So therefore we need to look at the definition, what collaterals means. You see? So collateral. Now let's take a look at, what collaterals means, right? So let's look at the definition of collateral. So go back to section 14 to look at, actually before you go 14, you go to 5.2. 5.2 means collateral. (5.2) tell you something about representation to collateral. All right. And it tells you about representation to collateral that borrower has good title to it. But let's go to section 14 to see collateral. Section all the way to section 14 to see collateral. And section 14 collateral, it tells you that any and all properties, rights, and assets of borrower described in Exhibit A. Now we have to go to Exhibit A. And then you have Exhibit A. And now Exhibit A tells us the description for the collateral. And it tells us collateral here means what? Means that the borrower's right, title, and interest in the following personal property. The term personal does not mean the English word that you're understanding personal. Personal does not mean personal, the way that you understand English word. Personal means any kind of property that's not real property. That's not houses and land. That's not real estate. So all properties out there. So for example, when you talk about inventories, equipment, farm products, you talk about promissory notes, talk about bill of lading, talk about stock, bonds, securities, talk about patent, copyright, trademarks, software, accounts, account receivables, anything out there, we call them personal properties. Okay, so in terms of property internationally, there's two different kinds of property. One kind is called real property. Real properties mean real estate property. That means land and houses. And then the other kind is called personal properties. In Vietnam, you call it movable properties. Right? I don't like the term movable properties because why? Movable is a very old concept. Nowadays, most important properties nowadays what? Right here. Most important properties right here. Invention, copyright, patent, invention, trademarks, the product of the mind is what's most important. And so you look at Uber, you look at Google, you look at Microsoft, you look at Amazon. What do they own? Intellectual property. And intellectual property are not movable. They are intangible. They're intangible, right? And so I know that Vietnam, you still use the old concept of movable properties, but internationally, we, the modern economy, we use the term personal property, or we just say that, we will identify tangible property, semi-tangible property, and intangible property. Intangible properties nowadays in the 21st century, intangible property are much more valuable. Right? I know in Vietnam, many of your transactions relating to real property, houses and land, 70% of your loans are involved in lands and houses and all that. But Vietnam's moving to the modern economy. The modern economy is that loans that you're going to make in the future should be related to so-called movable property, and intangible property, account receivables, those are the kind. So that's why here it's a personal property, okay? And so back to the definition. So they say that, all goods. So first one, all goods. So you look at the collateral definition. Can you turn it to me, please? So the Exhibit A, can you put Exhibit A's up? So Exhibit A say that all goods. So you look at the definition, Exhibit A, all goods. So goods, all goods. So goods is just such a name that you might have a misunderstanding. Goods is a very powerful word. All goods. Goods mean what? Inventory. Goods mean what? Equipment. Goods means what? Farm, agricultural products. Literally everything in this room is a good. The ceiling, the light, the water bottle, the desk, everything is good. It can be inventory, it can be equipment. So therefore, when they say that all goods, so may I have it up, Exhibit A? Exhibit A say all goods. So it looks so simple, but it's very powerful word, all goods. Right? And then it say accounts. We looked at the definition of accounts before. Remember that earlier? We looked at the definition of account because capital A. So all goods, accounts. Now look at what inside the parenthetical, including healthcare receivables. Exhibit A. Oh, my people is too slow. Sometimes I'm too energetic for them. Exhibit A. I want to show. So everybody, you have exhibit A. So it say including healthcare receivables. Everybody see that? Including healthcare receivables. Let me explain that one. Including healthcare receivables. It's all the way at the end to the exhibit A. Keep going. All the way, exhibit A. Okay, so right here, just stop right here. So you see that all the, including healthcare receivable. So why nowadays lenders care about healthcare receivables? So we just went through, well, almost recovered. We are still trying to recover from the big pandemic. So we can see that healthcare is a major issue. And then we see that their healthcare insurance. And then we see many countries, we have new hospitals, right? And healthcare is such a major issue here. And then what we see that banks providing loans for the construction of hospitals. And then insurance also involved in healthcare as well. So lots of healthcare insurance. And so therefore, account receivable relating to healthcare, we are talking about trillions of dollars. Because why? Because when I go to see a doctor, I have insurance, health insurance. And so that means from the doctor hospital perspective, I am an account receivable. I will pay to the doctor, or the insurance will pay to the doctor, right? I pay the insurance pay the doctor, pay the hospital. And so the hospital take all those healthcare receivables and use them as collateral in loan. So the hospital go to the bank asking for a loan, and then the bank will ask the hospital, what do you have as collateral? The hospital say, oh, we have healthcare insurance receivables, future payments from all the patients. Future payments from all the patients are used as the collateral in loans. So loan in the United States to hospital, millions dollars loans, hundreds of millions of dollars loans. And all the collaterals are what? Patients' money, patient future payments to the hospital. That's the collateral. Everybody with me on that? Yes, go ahead. Is this interesting?
Might I have a question that for the healthcare defined as the collateral, do we take it in terms of that ethically? Because that I understand that the healthcare receivable we just receive when you had the disease, a condition or something like that. But for this case, we take at the security at the collateral. One.
Okay.
So,
okay. So the questions, all of you understand the questions she asked relating to taking the healthcare receivable as collateral. Can we do that? Guess what? We, the lender, we take security interest in anything that has value. Anything that has value. And so therefore, remember I began today, I say you have to be innovative. And you have to look around, you say, what's of value? Oh, that's of value, we take them. What's of value? What's of values in a modern economy? Patients pay money to insurance company for healthcare, and they go to the doctor to go see a doctor, and the doctor in the hospital will get paid from the insurance company. And so the doctor, the hospital want to expand. They want to have a new building. They want to buy new equipment, and they come to you, the bank, for loans. And if you, the bank, say that, oh, doctor and hospital, you want to borrow money? What do you have as collateral? And the doctor say that I don't have anything. Oh, but what I have is that I have patients, and my patient will pay me through the insurance company. And the lender say, oh, that's good. We will loan you the money. And then all these healthcare insurance receivable in the future, that will be used as those are used as a collateral for the repayments of the loans. Because the healthcare insurance receivable has value. So anything has value. So it's not unethical at all. So it's very ethical. In fact, that we are, because we want more hospitals, because we want the construction of hospitals. And also because why? Because government has no money to keep building hospitals. And so private sources, where they're going to build hospitals, they come to the bank and borrow money from the bank or from the lenders. And then the bank lenders say, yes, we will provide you the loans for you to buy the equipment or construct the hospital. And we will take as collateral, not just the land, but sometimes the hospital in the United States, they don't own the land. They don't own the land. They don't own the right to use land. Everything is leased. But what does a hospital own? Oh, the hospital owns that all the future payments from the patients. So those are the collateral. Use them. Right? And so that's why what we have here, right in the definition related to collateral, we say these are very important now. All the goods and all the accounts, including healthcare insurance account receivables, because that's what it is. Right? Guess what? Same thing. If I'm the lender, and if a company come and they want to build a bridge, or the government agency come and they want to build a bridge, and this is a toll bridge, or they build a highway, a toll highway, I will immediately say, yes, we will lend you the money. What's the collateral? Future collection of all the tolls. So all the future tolls collection, they are account receivable. They are accounts. Same with future collection from patients. Those are healthcare insurance receivables. That's that. Okay. So that's how we be able to have construction of new hospital. We have new bridges, new freeways. That's why secure transaction is so important. All right. And so you in this room, you got to think of what are the new products with value that we can use them as collateral. So let's give an example. When e-commerce came into existence, everybody fight for the domain names, you know, and then domain names, is there legal protection for domain names? Are they protected under trademark law? Who cares? If they are valuable, we take them as collateral. We take them as collateral. So here, let me give you an example. At the early age, at the early type of e-commerce, one of the domain names that was valuable, you're going to laugh, sex.com. Sex.com, S-E-X, sex.com. Is there trademark protection for sex.com? No, but it's valuable. It's valuable in the marketplace. So therefore, if I'm the bank, I say, sure, I will lend you money to build that website and conduct whatever business you do with sex.com, and I'm taking security interest in that domain name, sex.com. That's that. So whatever new property that has value, you identified it, and you take a security interest in that. That's what we do. Okay. So for example, all those apps, I see apps, they are valuable. Take a security interest in that. Now, the most important thing is, how do you define the apps in this collateral? You know, you look at it and say, oh, if we take a security interest in the domain names, let's look at this collateral. Does this cover it? If we take a security interest in the APP, does this description of collateral cover it? Let's take a look. Right. So we have here, all right, so equipment, all right, inventory, blah, 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 franchise license agreements. Do you see anywhere in here APP or domain names? Anything's in here, domain names and APP and software? If you can find it, raise your hand. It's right in there. It's right in that. It's right in there. Domain names and APP is in there. It's right in there. Look at it. The lawyers are very good. The lawyer is very good. It's right in there. All the APP, all the domain names right in there. Yes, go ahead.
Financial assets.
Financial assets. Sorry, wrong answer. Wrong answer. Somebody else. Somebody else. For the APP and for the domain name. Is it in there? It's right in there. It's right in there. Right in there. General intangibles. He said right there. The defined term, general intangibles. Now we look at, it says general intangibles. Now we look at the definition of general intangibles. So now you go to section 14 and look at general intangibles. General intangibles. General intangibles. It's on page 33. General intangibles. So you look at general intangibles, and general intangible as defined in the code. And so general intangibles. So general intangibles. So it's like defined by the code. And then if you are in the United States and you pull up the code and you see general intangible, and general intangible means that anything that you cannot define, if they not patent, copyright, trademark, license, whatever that you cannot define, you cannot touch, you cannot feel. I mean, you cannot really touch an app, an app. You cannot really touch a domain name because it doesn't have a physical body. It's general intangible according to the law. And so that's why the lawyers in this case here use the word general intangibles. And so if the borrower has domain names, sex.com or whatever domain names, we don't care. It's general intangibles. It will be collaterals right here. If the borrower has 10 different APP, it will be covered under general intangibles right there. Okay. So this is a process. This is a very good kind of skills of drafting that you don't have to identify any APP, and yet because you use the term general intangible, it covers. You don't need to identify the domain names. General intangibles covers. Okay, so that's what we have here. So that's why you see the general intangibles aspect of it to do. So now we go back to, because we have the definitions. Go back to the exhibit A for the collateral description itself. So it tells us that, okay, all goods, all accounts, including healthcare receivables, equipment, inventory, contract rights, franchise license agreement, general intangibles. So general intangibles, we know will cover any kind of domain names, any kind of APP, everything's out here. And then we see commercial tort claims. So you say, what exactly commercial tort claims? And so the commercial tort claims, so for example, what if the borrower is in a litigation with a third party and they settle, and the settlement is 1 million USD? We want to take a security interest in that commercial tort claim. Whatever the settlement, whatever claims arising relating to commerce between the borrowers and the third party. Therefore, we, the lawyer helping the client, taking the security interest in commercial tort claims. Why this is important? Because we anticipate that businesses, the bank, might be in dispute. Okay, businesses or any businesses might be in dispute with third party. And then you might settle the litigation, and there might be a settlement amount of money. And so the lender wants to take a security interest in the commercial tort claims. All right, because that's my render future settlement type of monies here. So you can see that the lawyer anticipates all different kind of potential collaterals here and taking the security interest in them. So that's why the collateral description this way. Okay. And then of course, as you see, then later on, documents. Documents typically means in the international context, it means documents of titles. It means bill of ladings. It means air bills. Okay, so all the shipping documents documents of titles here. So we use the term documents, but it means documents of title. It means bills of lading. It means air bills. It means all the shipping documents. Okay, so that's what we have. Document title. Instruments. The term instrument in international context. The term, this is a very old term, been around for a long time, a long time. Instrument. Instruments here means it's including promissory notes. Okay, relating to loan documents. So you hear term instrument typically mean a loan document, a promise to pay back. And so the borrower will themselves, they might have all those loan documents from their customers, for example, or some promissory note from their customer. So therefore, the lender in this case want to take a security interest in the instruments. Okay, and then chattel paper. Chattel papers mean what? Those special loan documents or loan instrument that has collateral behind that. And so nowadays, because many of the chattel papers, they themselves electronics, they digital format. So therefore we have tangible and electronics as well. And obviously cash deposit accounts and what have you. All right, and now you can also see, so you can see the definitions of the collaterals here. Let me see what else here. All right. So now let's go back. Let's go, before we go back, why does the bank have Exhibit A? Why the bank has collateral description as Exhibit A? Why did the lawyers have the description, the collateral as an Exhibit A? Why didn't they put the collateral definition, the full description like that in section 14? Why do they have as an Exhibit A? Anybody? Can you think of? Yes, go ahead.
I think that when they put in the Exhibit A, that describe all the security or collateral in this part, and that is just the technical skill of the drafting. It how that the party can reference and easy to understand what is the collateral is, and also that it also support when you have the revise or amend of the collateral description. It's easy to make amendment later on.
Okay. I will accept that answer. One answer, that's good. There's more. That's more why the lawyers have as an Exhibit A. So have it as Exhibit A. Typically, this particular contract here will be reused many times with different borrowers, and which means the entire contract still good for subsequent transaction with different borrowers, but the collateral might be different. So therefore, the lawyers will use the same contract with different borrowers, make changes to some of the key terms, the numbers. The loans amount might be different, might be $50 million loans instead of 25, might be $10 million loans. The exhibit, so then you just change the number. That's easy to change in the main contract, but the collateral might be a little bit harder. So that's why they have Exhibit A. All they do will remove this description Exhibit A, and they might have a different Exhibit A for different borrower. All right, so you can see that, you know, this is the form contract that this particular bank used. And so therefore they say that for this client, this is the Exhibit A with this description. For the other client, there might be some revision, but we will have a different Exhibit A's here. So therefore, it's very easy to be able to use a different Exhibit A for a different client itself and change the small numbers in the term loan. And also the way that you provided that indeed. And so if there's any kind of amendment, revision to the Exhibit A, you just amend and change the Exhibit A itself. So much easier to change one of the exhibit. And the fact that you already name as Exhibit A, it's easier to make an amendment to the Exhibit A itself instead of make amendment to the main contract. So this is a good practice to use just exhibit to the main contract. Okay, I don't know how often you use exhibit. but international best practices, we use exhibits a lot. Exhibits a lot, particularly with collateral. Collateral typically will be in exhibits itself to do that. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to the creation of the security interest. Let's go back. Go back to the creation of the security interest back in the section 4. Okay, back to section 4 itself. So back to section 4 here. Back to section 4, and it's in 4.2. 4.2. 4.2 say priority of security interest. And so 4.2, a priority of the security interest here. So why the lawyers put the priority as a security interest in this particular case? All right. Priority of security interest. So the lenders, in this case here, they have 2 lenders, right? But they also know that the borrowers might have transaction with other banks, but we the lenders in this case want to have the priority, and so they insisted that with respect to the collateral, they insist in 4.2 that the borrowers represent warrants and covenant, the security interest grant in this case here, that will give the bank the first priority, perfected lien. So you can see that the bank say that, well, whatever you have to do, borrower, we insist that you have to give us the first priority, because first priority, if something's happened, we will get paid first. If there's other banks taking security interest in the same collateral, these 2 lenders here will get paid first because we have first priority. So this is the 4.2. Many of you in this room said that, well, how do we know that we have first priority? How do we know? Well, you know by conducting searches, and you see if there's other banks already registered their right with respect to the collateral. You tell the borrowers in section 3, the conditions for the loans, the borrower must receive and go and clear all the existing loans, all the existing security interest in section 3, conditions of loans. One of the conditions of loans that the borrowers have to clear any of the existing liens. And after they clear the existing liens in the number 3 condition of loan, then in section 4.2, they are able to give the 2 lenders here the first priority in the collateral. Everybody's with me? Everybody with me on these issues here, because you want to protect your clients. In this case here, 25 million USD, it's a big loan, and you want first priority. And the condition, the loans under section 3, that you tell the borrowers, go and clear up all the existing security interest. I don't care what you do, you have to clear it up as a condition, the loan. If you clear it up, then you give us the first priority, and that is in the paragraph section 4.2. And that's why section 3 is condition of loan. Go and clear it up. Give us first priority in 4.2. And the lawyers, you then conduct the searches online and see that, oh yes, everything clear. There's no more registration with any banks involving this collateral. So it's clear. Indeed, we now have first priority. So you have to do the checking and verifying that they're making sure that you have the first priority. You cannot just rely on what the borrowers say. Everything's online. You can check them to do that, right? And so then in section 4.3, section 4.3, it says authorization to register. Authorization to register. the security interest or the financing statement. That's registration for security interest. And so here in the contract, here's in the credits and the security agreements here, the lender insists that the borrower hereby authorizes the agent on behalf of the lenders to register the security interest. So why did the lawyers draft this way? Why did the lawyers in this case draft that the borrowers, you must allow us to register our security interest? And why we put it in the contract itself? Anybody has any idea why? Anybody has any idea why we put it in the contract that the borrowers authorizes the agent to register the security interest? Financing statement, the translation might not be correct. I just want to make sure that the Vietnamese translation is correct. I'm not sure that 100% correct. Financing statement here means registration of the security interest in the English context. Okay, it means registering the security interest. I'm just looking at the Vietnamese translation. It might not be. Maybe I don't understand Vietnamese well, but it doesn't seem 100% correct. Just want to make sure that my question to you is that just understand the English portion. The English is that why the borrower allows the lender, the agent, to register the security interest. Because under secure transaction law, if you, the lender, you register first before anybody else, you have priority, number one. Number two, the borrower authorizes you the right to register. Then you don't have to wait for the borrower to do so. The borrower might forget. And if the borrower forgets, then you, the lender, might be in trouble because somebody else might file in between. Okay? And so therefore, you don't want the borrowers to just sit on it and do nothing. You want to receive the authorization and you quickly go and register. The sooner you register, you protect your rights the sooner. So that's why you want to have this authorization and you register your security interest yourself. And when you register the security interest in the borrower's property, you don't have to inform them at all. So that's what this English portion say, that authorize the agent to file the financing statement. That means to register the security interest without informing the borrower. Okay? And so doing that way, that you, the lenders, you in control, you immediately register, protect your rights. Number one, you don't wait for the borrower to do because the borrower might forget. Okay, two, number three, because you register as soon as possible, then you establish your priority, because we know priorities mean what whoever registers first will have priority in the security interest. So that's why lawyers, they draft 4.3. Okay. And also, and the other components is also really important. Can you the lender, can you register the security interest? Okay, before, there was a question yesterday, before the advance is made, the money is released. You know, before the money is released or before the loans is provided. Can you, the lender, register your security interest before the bank release the loans amount or before the banks provide the advance sum? The answer is yes, you can do that. You can register your security interest even before you issue the term loan. If before you wire $25 million, you can go and run to the office. Well, you don't have to run now there. You can just use a click of the mouse. It's everything online, right? You can register that. And because why? If you register first, priority before anybody. So that's why you register first. And you look at 4.3. 4.3 does not say the bank must send the money. Then the bank has the right to register a security interest. Does not say that. 4.3 say that the borrower authorizes the agent, the bank, to register. And so therefore, many lenders in the United States, they will register their security interest before they even releases the loan, before they wire the money, before release the loan, because of 4.3, because they want to establish their priority. The moments that they register their rights, everybody's on notice. So that's why the bank wants to protect itself. So that's 4.3. The reason for 4.3 is right there. Do that. Okay. So that's an important component. If you look at page 10, I talked to you yesterday that affirmative covenants, I will not go over them, but I want you to just see it. Affirmative covenants. 10 is affirmative covenants. So we have before creation, security interest, representation and warranties. And now we're in affirmative covenants. So that's on page 10, affirmative covenants. And in the banking industry, everybody nationwide, globally, outside Vietnam, all know that affirmative covenants mean borrower shall do the following. This is what the borrower must do. Called affirmative covenants. Borrowers must do. This is banking, international banking. We all use the same terminology. Affirmative covenants, borrowers must do. So the term covenants mean what? You promise, you must do. Affirmatives is things that you must do, right? That is on page 10. And then you go to page 15, 1.5. Page 15 say negative covenants. I mentioned to you yesterday, negative covenants. Page 15. And so negative covenants, that means the borrower shall not do. That's why we call negative covenants. So all banks, you know, internationally, we use this kind of phraseology here. Negative covenants, affirmative covenants. Okay, negative covenants. This is shall not do. The other one is must do. This one you shall not do. Okay, shall not do. And you shall not do without the written authorization. It means that, yeah, you can do, but you have to get us to agree with you. Shall not do without written consent. You have to have written consent from the lenders, otherwise cannot do it. Okay. So shall not do without the written consent. So for example, if the borrower is going to merge with another company here, and so therefore in this situation here, they need to inform the bank and ask the lenders here authorization for okay with the merger. Of course, in this situation, the lender will look into it and say that okay, right? So these are with negative covenants here. All these to protect the lenders itself. Now, number 8, which is on page 17, is events of default. Event of default. Number 8, the events of default, number 8. So in the 8.1 related to payment default, that makes sense. But look at 8.2. Oh, interesting, 8.2. 8.2 telling us that 8.2 say that covenant default. So remember we saw the term covenants before, affirmative covenant. This is what borrowers must do. Negative covenants, borrowers shall not do unless written consent. And then default, payments, but then 8.2, covenant default, which means what? If you violate anything under affirmative defense, or you violate anything under negative covenants, affirmative covenants, negative covenants, that will be deemed a default. We will accelerate and call on the loan. Right? So you see the drafting so clear. Right? So the drafting is really clear. Events of default go parallel with covenant default. Covenant default, right? So it's really parallel. Affirmative covenants that we talk about, negative covenants, but if you violate any of them, we call them covenant default here. All right, in the event of default. So event of default, which means that the bank goes to call on the loan, usually, right? So event of default here. So let's look at event of default here. So 8.4. 8.4, so we have 8.2 relating to covenant defaults, and 8.4, oh, look at what happened. So what if you, the borrowers here, what if that you are in situation that someone going to see an attachment of the value more than $50,000 if, for example, your employee, borrower employee, fell down at work and sue them, and then somehow seeking an attachment for properties of $50,000 or more. That will constitute a default. See, the lawyers here protect the lenders, say that, any kind of attachment, third party seeking against you, the borrower, more than $50,000, that's a default. The loan is $25 million. This is $50,000, not a whole lot. But the lender say that, the fact that there's a levy against you for $50,000, we don't like it. That's a violation. That's deemed as a default. Okay. So you can see that the lawyer in this case said, all right, so, or any lien, that can be tax lien. You owe the government money and the government file a tax lien, and the values of the tax lien is more than $50,000. The lender say that's a default. Why is that a default? Why is that a default? A business cannot pay tax lien. That means that business is in deep trouble. A business cannot pay the tax, therefore the business in lots of trouble. And that's why the bank decided that, the lender decided that, you cannot pay the tax, and it's more than $50,000. That means you're in deep financial trouble, which means that you are not paying a lot of other people as well. So therefore, we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe. We declare that's a default. And we're going to accelerate the loans itself. Or obviously that they probably will have cure of defaults. Remember, cure default Everything is relationship. Maybe give them 15 days to pay off that $50,000, and then everything's back to okay. We can give them cure of default here, right? And so it's involved in tax lien right there. Tax lien will be a defense of default. So notice of lien or levy. And you see that the lawyers here is very good. They did not use the word tax lien. They just used the word lien, which means any lien included tax lien. Yesterday, the lawyer is not so good. They just say tax lien, but this lawyer is better. They use the word lien. Lien could be any liens out there, including tax lien, including anybody's out there that have any claims that more than $50,000 attachment against that, and then the bank's going to call it. They say default, okay? And so 8.5, insolvency. We talked about yesterday. And so if the borrowers here that they themselves is insolvent, and if they file for bankruptcy, they file for insolvency, the lender say, well, it doesn't matter that you have been very good client, you pay me every month you pay $1 million on the loan. Well, but you just file for bankruptcy, even though you keep paying to us, we still going to declare that's a default. And therefore we accelerate and get all the loans here. So that's in 8.5, similar to what we saw. Okay. 8.8, let's say 8.7. 8.7 is here. Okay, let's roll up. 8.7, and so relating to any kind of judgment. So any lawsuits out there that have a judgment of $500,000, $500,000, and the bank find out, because in the US everything is open. And so if there's a judgment, it could be recorded because court proceedings open. Everybody will know. And so therefore the bank will find out and the lender will find out and say, oh, the judgment is more than $500,000. It's an event of default. We're going to call on the law. So that's an event of default right there. So that's why it's under judgment. Okay, if there's any judgment, penalties, not only from the court, from government authorities, anything like that, that's valued more than $500,000, that's deemed as a default. We're going to call on the law to protect ourselves. So we'll have that is 8.7. Okay. And then of course, you know, let's say 8.10. 8.10 relating to government approvals. If during 8.10, so if any permit, any license, any permit from the government now been revoked, which means the borrower might not be able to continue to conduct the business. That means they might have difficulty to pay back the loans. So therefore, the bank, the lender is concerned. That's why they put in 8.10. If any government's, you know, authorization is revoked, then that is a default. So they put right in that. So that in 8.10 itself. Okay. So that's what they have. So you can see that the events of default is really comprehensive. There's more, but in the interest of time, I will not go over. But you can see that 10 even kind of events of defaults here, comprehensive to cover all of them. And obviously, number 9, section 9. Section 9 will be rights and remedies. So I will not talk about rights and remedies. And for now, I am going to open up, before I open up for the question, let's look at the signature block. Signature block, please. So at the end of section 14 are the definitions, and then we have the signature blocks. So let's look at the signature blocks.
Số phần có chữ ký Hoa.
Right, signature blocks. So the signature blocks, you can see that's very, very simple. Just the borrower, the agent in this case, and the two lenders, the signature blocks. And you can see that there's no notary publics at all, which is very different in Vietnam. I hear the word công chứng, right? You have công chứng. In the United States, we don't need them. Years ago, we did. Years ago, we did. Not anymore. We don't do that anymore. Okay? So just like contract signed by the parties, that's good. Witnesses, who care about witnesses? We don't require witnesses. No witnesses here. It doesn't matter, $25 million or $25 billion, it doesn't matter. No witnesses. Nah, the law does not require that. Why is that? We want to make things easier for contracts to be formed. We want lots of contracts. We want lots of credit agreements, lots of security agreements. It's good for the economy. So therefore, we eliminate anything that's unnecessary. Okay, so that's why. Now you can see that. All right. So we look at the way that the signatures work. So you have here, you have by, and so sign William Ingram. You see the word S, the small S right there. It's not a real. There's nobody took the pen and sign anymore. It's electronic. So we just put S. That's it. My name on it. I just put an S right there. There's no like real signature. It's fine. It says S. William Ingram. S. Jason Davis. It's fine. Signature does not have to be real signature anymore. It's okay. Just say S, right? And then you spell out the name of the person, like William Ingram, and then the title, Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer. So under law, let's say law in the United States, when I look at that, I know right away that the person, is an agent, is essentially representative, legal representative of that borrower, and has the right to sign this, and also that the person signing it in his capacity as the chief financial officer, there is no personal liability to that person at all. So everybody who become lawyer know that. So we look at it, we say, oh yeah, he's an authorized party, signed for his company, and there's no personal liability there. That's clear. So same with Silicon Valley Bank. It's $25 million loans in this particular case here, and more than 35 million. And you have Jason Davis. He's just a director at that bank, and he signed it. Okay. And then you have Ali Bank, and they have an authorized signatory, Greg Weiss, to sign it. And that's it. And it's very common in the United States. If you look at this particular signature page, you see it say that it is a new page. And it say, in witness thereof, the parties here too have caused this agreement to be executed as of the effective date. As of the effective date. I began this morning when the gentleman asked me and say that he would like to make it clearer that this agreement is controlled and become effective on the effective day. But look at how the parties say, oh, we caused this agreement here to be executed. We signed it and executed as of the effective day, which means as of the effective day that we identify the beginning, it is binding on the parties. That's what it says. That's how we draft it that way. Effective day from the top, we say that here we cite it as of effective day. And typically in the United States, we have the signature page on a separate page. All right, on a separate page, because why? Well, a long time ago, we might not want to fax the entire document of 60 pages. We just fax the big bosses the signature page for him or her to sign. The lawyers take care of the first 59 pages. The client just signed it. And so therefore, we want it on just its own page. Okay? And so make it cleaner. Its own page here. And we don't want it on the page connect to the contract. Then if something happens, you know, we mess up the rest of the contracts. So it's better to have its own clean page. So that's a common practice as well to do that. Okay. So with that, any comments, any questions?
Cảm ơn giáo sư Nguyễn ạ. Dạ vâng ạ, ban tổ chức sẽ mở ra độ khoảng 10-15 phút cho các phần ý kiến đóng góp cũng như là các câu hỏi của các quý vị trực tuyến cũng như là trực tiếp ạ. Xin mời ạ. Bạn đến từ đâu?
Xin chào giáo sư. Em có câu hỏi là theo như cái phần chữ ký á, thì cái chỗ mà bên vay á là cái công ty ANC, còn bên cho vay á là hai ngân hàng. Thì cái ngân hàng mà Silicon này nó vừa đại diện cho bên vay và nó vừa ở bên cho vay, thì liệu rằng nó ký hai bên có phù hợp với pháp luật ở bên Mỹ không?
Sure. Good question relating to that. So it's quite common in the US. You will see that the lenders also serve as an agent as well, because the agents here, they use the term agents, that they will taking care of the perfection, the security interest, and also taking care of the so-called administrative aspect related to the loan. And then, but that's one entity has the role of the lender and the role of the agent, and that's really common. See that a lot, and that's normal in the United States itself. I know it seems so strange, right? But it's very, very common, because you have to think that a particular bank in the US is very, very big bank and have so many divisions, and so have the people have many skills that be able to like serve as the lenders, and also that the bank has the function of serving as an administrative agent for this on behalf of both the lenders, Silicon Valley banks, and also the lender Ali Bank. So that's common. There's no problem at all relating to that. So what concern do you have? Do you have some concerns relating to that? Do you think that it become biased, or the agent will not will represent Silicon Valley Bank better than Ali Bank? You have concerns? That's why you asked the question.
Chị vừa đặt câu hỏi đấy ạ. Chị có quan ngại gì không ạ? Thì chị chia sẻ thêm ạ.
Như vậy thì bắt buộc cái công ty mà bên vay đó là phải ký, chứ không trong trường hợp mà cái ngân hàng Silicon này là đại diện ký nhân danh cho công ty là không được.
They are agents. Agent in this case here taking care with respect to the collateral. And so the agent is like this. They representing, but with respect to the collateral, they taking care of, they monitor the collateral, they make sure perfection, the security interest itself. So that's what the agent here means. And they have to work on behalf of both banks.
Yeah.
Isn't that strange compared to Vietnam?
Dạ đúng rồi, trái so với Việt Nam.
Yeah. So in the US, it's perfectly fine to do that.
Đại diện quản lý tài sản của mình sẽ ký một cái hợp đồng riêng.
Dạ, câu hỏi tiếp theo nha.
Dạ, thưa giáo sư, câu hỏi liên quan đến cái hiệu lực á, thì theo quy định theo quy định của pháp luật thì là các bên có thể thỏa thuận với nhau về cái thời hạn có hiệu lực của hợp đồng. Dạ, tức là có thể rằng là ngày hôm nay mình ký và mình quy định cái hiệu lực trước đó. Thì em không biết rằng là quy định của bên pháp luật Mỹ nó có như vậy hay không. Và cái câu hỏi thứ hai rằng là theo quy định của pháp luật Việt Nam thì khi mà ngân hàng phát hành một cái bảo lãnh thì không được lùi ngày. Có nghĩa rằng là cái hiệu lực của thư bảo lãnh nó phải kể từ ngày phát hành hoặc sau ngày phát hành. Như vậy thì em không biết rằng thực tế phát hành bảo lãnh của các ngân hàng bên Mỹ thì quy định về vấn đề này như thế nào.
Okay, thank you. So if I answer not right to your question, just let me know. Okay. So with respect to the last question in terms of the 10 days, the law in the United States with respect to secure transactions that there's just think about that. If you enter into a secure transaction, you want to be able to immediately register your right to protect your rights. And so if there's any gaps, gaps only happen with respect to some of the collateral. And so some collateral transform from the telephone to the water. And so when there's transformation, the question then whether your perfection continue in the new collaterals or not. And so in that kind of situation, then the borrower has 20 days that they have to make sure that do they have to amend the registrations or not. And so that's when we see any gaps. And also under US secure transaction law, the registration statement is good for 5 years. And sometimes that the loan period is much longer. And so therefore you have 6 months grace period ahead of time to file a new extension of time. But for most of the times that after you have the registration, the security interest, your security interest will be maintained and protected. And so there is no gaps that occur. So I'm not sure that I quite understand like exactly what Vietnam's law with respect to the 10 days. Huyen, can you clarify for me what the 10 days about?
I think that her question is a little bit different because her question is about the term of the loan contract.
Oh.
So like for example, in Vietnam, normally they put the term of loan contract like for example 5 years. But how about the US practice?
Oh, you have what? The parties, freedom of contracts, do what you want. Do whatever you want. There's no law to say that, oh, it's only 5 years. No, and so it's up to the parties what they want. If they want it longer than that, that's fine. So you want 6 years, that's fine. So there's no law that requires a certain time period itself with respect to the loans itself. So not just 5 years, it can be longer if you wish. But in terms of commercial reality, when somebody uses the term loan, then the term loan typically less than 3 years. Does that answer your question? So term loans usually means less than 3 years, but that's not a legal requirement, no. And so loans terms, it can be longer if the party want to do so, but it's not a legal requirement, no.
Yes, I think that in Vietnam regulation, there are some, the regulation issued by the State Bank of Vietnam. Like for example, if you have the real estate loan, so it should be within how many years, right? Like for example, 20 years or 30 years for resident loan, for example. So that's why I think that it makes a such question.
Thank you. So in terms of real estate loans in the US, we'll have 2 different kinds of real estate loans, 15 years, and you have 30 years. So that's with real estate. But in secure transaction on movable properties, there's no requirement like that.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Any other question, please? Các anh các chị có
Dạ, cô có thể chia sẻ thêm với tụi em á, là đối với việc mà thế chấp bất động sản chẳng hạn, thì theo luật bên đó có yêu cầu phải công chứng hoặc là phải có cái người thứ ba làm chứng không ạ? Dạ, tại vì chẳng hạn như đối với cái tài sản thế chấp mà theo cái hợp đồng này á, thì hiện tại theo quy định của pháp luật Việt Nam thì cũng không yêu cầu phải có công chứng chứng thực hoặc là người thứ ba làm chứng gì hết. Dạ, em cảm ơn cô.
Okay, thank you. So IFC is supposed to only train you on movable financing. I'm not supposed to say anything relating to real property. I understand that you have more concern relating to real properties. So typically with real properties, yes, that's in the US, laws controlled by local law. And so lands and houses, any kind of financings involving lands and houses controlled by local law. There's no federal law for that at all. So local laws will require the public notaries with respect to the loans documents itself. So they have that. And a lot of people in the United States don't like that kind of requirements at all, right? And the reason for it is that because with real property like houses, there's such a big cost. That's all the requirements on public notaries and title search and insurance search. It costs way too much money. Just want to share with you that there's new blockchain technology with new company proposing using blockchain technology that remove title insurance, remove public notary, remove all those layers away. And the blockchain technology just allow buyer and seller enter into a transaction involving a house or land or building. And then the money will be going from the banks, one bank to the other bank, but all the transaction will be recorded on the blockchain. And we don't need to have various third party, or the middlemen inside, including public notaries type, or including title search companies, or including insurance, because in the United States it's quite complicated. They also require insurance titles as well. So what I'm trying to answer your question is yes, we require it, but it's too complicated. And now their proposal on using blockchain to do away from all of that. So there's a lot of new tech companies essentially that have using blockchain to remove a lot of the kind of normative regulations that we want to remove them.
Professor Nguyen, there is another question relating the payment guarantee.
Payment guarantee.
What can I say? Like for example, if you are a bank and you start a contract with the client, and then the client needs to pay for the contract with the other vendor, and then you guarantee for that client, and then you will be on behalf of the client to pay for the vendor of the client.
Okay.
So we call the payment guarantee, right?
Okay. So,
and no, actually the question is, in Vietnam, if you sign the payment guarantee with the client, so the effective day won't be on the day that you sign the payment guarantee. But the question is it okay in US if the effective of the payment guarantee can be backdated?
Okay. So we use the name, it's not warranty, but essentially the concept of guarantor. You guarantee something. And so the individual or the company that's guaranteed the repayments of the loans, for example, in that particular context. And typically then the guarantors will enter into an agreement with the lenders. And in that context, whatever contracts that have the effective days for that particular contract, that will be effective between the guarantors and the lender. Why do I say that? It could very well be the original relationship. For example, the original relationship between the bank and the borrowers, everything goes fine. And then something happened to the borrower, you know, a couple of months later, next year, something happened. In that situation, the bank might tell the borrower, I need you to get a guarantor now. All right, so that might happen. Or in some situation, in the original agreement, they have to get a guarantor. All right, and so there are many situations when guarantors arises, either in the original or in subsequent months, subsequent years later. So in both of those contexts, then there typically will be a guarantees agreements then between the banks and the guarantor himself, herself, or the companies itself. And also that obviously there's the kind of guarantors not only for the repayments of the loans, but in some situation where you have the so-called guarantors who providing the property as collateral. So therefore, in that situation, then the lender making sure that drafting the guarantors agreement, that the guarantors not only that promise to pay, but the guarantors also put up the property as collateral. And so then in that situation, we have another name, we call them supporting obligation, you know, because they providing the supporting property and also the promise to guarantee to pay if the other side does not pay. So we have separate contracts for them. And also the lender will register their security interest in the property. And of course that they go into making sure that the guarantors will pay according to what they promise in the contract itself. Am I answered your question? Am I answer your question?
In this case, so the contract will be effective on the day of they sign, but is it okay if they can guarantor for the other payment in the back date?
Can they go backward essentially? Can they guarantee something backwards with respect to that? They guarantee for the loans already in existence? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. If that's what they want to do, remember that I mentioned to you that in the second scenario, that when the borrower is in trouble now, and they need to go get a guarantor because they're in financial trouble, they're unable to pay. And so in that situation, the lender say that go get me a guarantor, and the guarantor, if the guarantor is going to sign, and it's how you draft the contract. If the contract say the guarantors promise to pay the existing loan that have been in existence 6 months ago, and the guarantors that guaranteed to pay the existing loan, because it's ongoing loan. So yes, it's how you draft the contract that the guarantors have to pay. How much is that? But many guarantors might not want to do that. They might want to, you know, pay in forwards, but it just all depends on the draft the contract itself. So it's okay.
Okay, thanks. Một câu hỏi cuối cùng ạ, tại vì thời gian cũng đã hết rồi ạ, thì xin mời quý vị có câu hỏi cuối cùng. Xin mời bạn.
Cô ơi, cho em hỏi lại cái phần đầu của hợp đồng á, thì em thấy cái tên của doanh nghiệp á, là được ghi rất là ngắn gọn. Thì ở Việt Nam thì nếu như mà địa chỉ của công ty không ghi cũng có thể được. Nhưng mà cái số giấy đăng ký kinh doanh của doanh nghiệp thì phải có để xác định được. Tại vì có những cái doanh nghiệp là cái tên cũng sẽ tương tự nhau, có thể là gây sự hiểu lầm. Cho nên là nếu như mà ở Mỹ thì cái cách mà họ tránh được cái sự hiểu lầm là như thế nào? Với lại nếu mà khách hàng cá nhân thì có phải ghi số ID hay không?
Yeah, thank you for question. Vietnam, so many things in Vietnam is so complicated. You know, in the US, we have people the same name. You know, we have thousands of people have the same name, Susan Smith. Just like in Vietnam, you have many people with the same name. But it's okay, you know. We don't make people put down their social security number on the loans agreements. If it's personal loan, we will not have Social Security private number. Because why? Because we live in the age of many hackers. Because the hacker hack into the banks and take those numbers, the banks you in trouble. Because those are personal information, that's very private information, and hackers can use those numbers to destroy somebody's life. So therefore, the banks, you don't dare to have those numbers. Because you have those numbers, you buy yourself liability. So banks not going to ask for those Social Security numbers on the loans agreements. No, they're not going to ask for that. All right. So that's very different. How about businesses? Businesses have tax ID. Why the bank in the model samples agreements do not ask for the tax ID the business? In the US, we don't care. Because why? Well, you know, the companies, they themselves might change later on and get another tax ID. What's good is the use for asking information that they're going to change easily. You know, why? We don't care. And so then how do we avoid problems then? We avoid problems because remember I told you banking is about relationship. You have coffee with your client, you know what's going on with your client. This is a $25 million deal, it's a big deal. You're gonna have coffee with your clients frequently. You know what's going on in your client business. And so therefore, if anything that if they change name, they change address, they change the tax ID, you should be able to understand client business and be able to know. All right. And so therefore, we don't ask for tax ID, business tax ID. We don't ask for any of those informations at all. All right. But we rely on that, these clients here, we have financial statement. And so most likely the banks in this situation look at the financial statement of the company. And we know the borrower business very well, looking at all the financial statement, looking at the books. You can audit their books with all their financial statement. You know where they are, how they located, their businesses, you know that. And also in the US, we can find a lot of data about the borrowers, a lot of information available out there. And the bank can conduct those searches. And typically, that's what the bank's fees, you know, the bank charges fees. Like in this particular transaction of $25 million transaction, the fees that the banks impose on the term loan is, I believe, $125,000, and on the revolving credits, $125,000. And so just the fees alone is $250,000 USD. So in this loan that we're talking about, $250,000 USD in fees alone before the signing of this loan. So that money is used to conduct a lot of due diligence by the bank. So the bank get to know the client, looking at the client business, looking at a lot of information about the clients. They already know. So therefore they don't put it on the loans agreement, but they know what the tax ID will be. They know where the client's located. They know a lot about the clients. They have all the documentation, all many financial statements about the borrower. They in fact, because we live in Industrial 4.0, that the banks will have lots of digital information about the borrower in this case. They have detailed information about this particular clients, okay? But they're not going to put it in the loan document. No, they will have the whole digital file about this clients here. And the more data that the bank collects about this client, the bank will be able to use them to predict behavior. Because we're in digital 4.0, everything is data. But that does not mean you put it in the loans agreements itself. So Silicon Valley banks or many banks in the United States that are able to expand because they sit in on lots of data. and they know the behaviors of each of their borrowers. And then they use those data and then they predict the behaviors as well. Okay? So that's what we call analytics or predictive analytics. And in fact, that one bank expand and grow better than the other banks because they know how to use the data better than the other banks. And because they have the data based on the client behaviors. So for example, they will have the data if this particular borrower has guarantors and who the guarantors, and the bank will do a lot of due diligence data information about that guarantor. And then they look at this client here, what kind of business, they put all that information in the data system as well. And they look at this particular client, what business they in. So they have all those data. So everything now is data. Okay? And then they will compare those data to the other clients. And then they see that, why this client only needs 2 years term loan, not 3 years term loans. And then what business they in that they need only 2 years term loans. Okay? And then they look at, for examples here, all those accounts and account receivable as collateral. Well, the bank will collect all that information about all those accounts, account receivable. Remember, as collateral, the bank collect all those information as well. And then they go to probably use that information and matching with another borrowers over here. What kind of clients do they have? What kind of customer they have? And then they look at who are these customers? Are the customers of the borrowers? Are they potential customers for us, the bank as well? So they dig in really deep now in the data.
Okay.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is that what's in the loan agreements behind that? Lots of data.
Yeah. Cảm ơn giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn ạ. Thực ra thì cái câu chuyện mà giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn vừa chia sẻ ấy, thì nó có phần nào liên quan đến chủ đề ngày mai của chúng ta đúng không ạ? Cái chủ đề ngày mai thì nó sẽ liên quan đến dữ liệu và phân tích dữ liệu dành trong ngành tài chính. Thế thì bây giờ thì cũng đã gần 12:30 rồi ạ. Thì cũng xin phép là giáo sư, mặc dù biết là giáo sư cũng vẫn đang rất là tràn đầy năng lượng và vẫn có rất nhiều những kinh nghiệm rồi là thực tiễn rồi là những kiến thức để chia sẻ với chúng ta, nhưng mà thời gian thì nó cũng là hữu hạn. Thì do vậy nên là ban tổ chức cũng xin phép là được đóng lại 1 ngày rưỡi cái khóa tập huấn về kỹ năng soạn thảo hợp đồng tín dụng và hợp đồng bảo đảm tại đây. Và chúng tôi cũng rất là hy vọng rằng là trong tương lai á, với các nhu cầu của các anh các chị, nếu cần thiết thì chúng tôi sẵn sàng có thể mời lại giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn và sẽ chia sẻ về những cái kỹ năng sâu hơn. Thay mặt cho Hiệp hội Ngân hàng, thay mặt cho AFC, tôi cũng xin được chân thành cảm ơn tất cả các quý vị đã ngồi cho đến giờ này, và đặc biệt là lời cảm ơn dành cho giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn. Mặc dù bay từ Mỹ sang vẫn đang còn jet lag, nhưng mà khi mà giảng bài với chúng ta thì vẫn rất là tràn đầy năng lượng ạ. Một tràng vỗ tay dành cho giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn ạ. Cảm ơn tất cả các anh các chị đã ngồi cho đến giờ phút này, và cảm ơn các anh các chị đã tham dự trực tuyến, cũng đã ngồi nghe cái phần chia sẻ của giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn. Cảm ơn đội ngũ kỹ thuật, cảm ơn phiên dịch, anh phiên dịch cũng như là tất cả đội ngũ ở khách sạn đã giúp chúng ta có 1 ngày rưỡi thật sự là hiệu quả. Và chúng tôi cũng hy vọng rằng là sau cái buổi ngày hôm nay thì các anh các chị sẽ thấy rằng là cái việc mà chúng ta soạn thảo một cái hợp đồng tín dụng và hợp đồng bảo đảm đúng và đủ và hợp lý thì sẽ giúp cho chúng ta rất nhiều trong cái việc là quản trị rủi ro của chính các ngân hàng của chúng ta. Thế thì sau cái buổi ngày hôm nay thì bạn Hoa sẽ gửi cho các anh các chị một số cái thông tin liên quan đến tài liệu cũng như là cái đường link để cho các anh các chị có thể đánh giá về, thứ nhất là về chủ đề của ngày hôm nay có phù hợp với các anh các chị hay không, và thứ hai nữa là chúng tôi cũng muốn được lắng nghe xem là các anh các chị có muốn có thêm các chủ đề gì trong tương lai hay không. Thì xin mời các anh các chị là dành vài phút, chắc là chỉ mất độ khoảng 3, 4, 5 phút là cùng thôi ạ, để điền vào cái đường link đó, và qua đó thì chúng tôi sẽ thu thập được cái thông tin liên quan đến các cái chủ đề cho những cái sự kiện tiếp theo. Và cũng xin thông báo là ngày mai, ngày mùng 3 tháng 8 và tại hội trường này thì chúng tôi sẽ có thêm một cái buổi hội thảo khác tập trung vào lĩnh vực về dữ liệu và phân tích dữ liệu dành cho ngành tài chính và đặc biệt là ngành tài chính số. Các anh chị biết là tài chính số Việt Nam thì hiện nay đang rất là nổi, đúng không ạ? Thế nên là chúng tôi cũng muốn tổ chức một cái buổi như vậy. Thì nếu mà ngày mai các anh chị, nếu các anh chị đã đăng ký rồi thì thôi xin mời các anh chị ngày mai tới, và tôi cũng rất hy vọng được gặp lại các anh chị. Thế còn trong trường hợp các anh chị chưa đăng ký thì các anh chị vui lòng gặp bạn Hoa, thì bạn Hoa sẽ đưa tên các anh chị vào trong danh sách. Thì chúng tôi vẫn mở trực tuyến và trực tiếp, nên là chúng ta hoàn toàn có thể tham dự được vào cái buổi ngày mai. Thì có rất nhiều các cái diễn giả đến từ các nơi khác nhau, thì cũng khá là thú vị để chúng ta nghe. Và một cái điểm nữa mà tôi cũng nhận được một số các cái câu hỏi của các anh các chị trực tuyến liên quan đến tài trợ kho hàng, thì tôi xin phép là dành các cái câu hỏi đấy cho ngày thứ 6, vì sáng thứ 6 chúng tôi sẽ có một cái chủ đề tập trung vào tài trợ kho hàng thì nó sẽ phù hợp hơn. Bên cạnh đó thì tôi cũng nhận được một số yêu cầu của các anh các chị là tổ chức một số các cái khóa liên quan đến cho vay trực tuyến ạ. Thì tôi cũng có chia sẻ với các anh chị là cho vay trực tuyến thì nó có cho vay cá nhân và cho vay doanh nghiệp. Thì trong tương lai chắc là có lẽ là cũng nhờ sự trợ giúp của giáo sư Xuân Thảo Nguyễn cùng với IFC ạ, chúng tôi sẽ cố gắng tổ chức các cái buổi chia sẻ kinh nghiệm quốc tế, và chúng ta sẽ vận hành cái dữ liệu, kho dữ liệu cho vay trực tuyến như thế nào, rồi là chúng ta sử dụng các nền tảng công nghệ ra sao, blockchain như thế nào, đúng không ạ, trong cho vay trực tuyến. Thì chúng tôi cũng hứa hẹn là chúng tôi sẽ tổ chức một cái buổi như vậy cho các anh các chị. Thì hy vọng là khi mà có thông tin ra thì bên ban tổ chức sẽ nhận được sự tham gia đầy đủ của các quý vị. Và một lần nữa thì xin chân thành cảm ơn các quý vị.